Okay, everyone, welcome to Intro to Generative Artificial Intelligence, Demonstrations and Conversations. This is the second session for this quarter, and my name is Greg Benn. I'm one of the SCC librarians. I'm very excited to be here. I have been doing workshops on generative AI for multiple years now. Since I started at SCC last fall, I've been running GenAI workshops and presentations every quarter. And before I was at Lake Washington Institute of Technology as a librarian, and I ran workshops and trainings there as well. So GenAI is definitely part of my passion, my interest as a librarian and as an educator. And also, as we're seeing with every week that goes by, more and more people are getting involved in the conversation. So I've been really overjoyed to see consistent interest from students and educators and the world just talking, discussing, exploring this new technology. So I'm happy that you're all here today so we can continue the conversation. For those that are online, you're welcome to use the chat. And I can read the chat. You're also welcome to interrupt me and ask a question by unmuting. We have a small group today, so that should not impact our time and our content today. So let's get into this. So what this workshop is, this is an introduction to the basics of generative artificial intelligence, or GenAI technology. It's a look at using GenAI ethically, productively, and critically. And it's a workshop for the college community from the library. Welcome, Katerina. What this workshop is not a deep dive into the underlying technology of GenAI. So if you're in computer science or software development and you want to learn more about that, or maybe you just have a general interest, look elsewhere. There's plenty of resources online that go deeper than what we're going to cover today. This is not an advanced look at specific tools. We will have workshops later this quarter that do dive in and use the tools in more advanced ways, but today is not that day. It's just a general introduction. And this is not the only perspective on GenAI. So there are many different people, as I mentioned, that are exploring GenAI, and mine is one of many. So I want you all to know that this is not the standard training for every college student or the standard training that's out there. There's a lot of different ways that people are presenting content around this. So today's agenda, today we have GenAI basics. We'll cover some of the basics. We'll talk about common tools, and I'll demonstrate a couple of those. And we will then talk about prompts and iterations. We'll talk about the higher ed and professional contexts for GenAI, cover some of the issues and benefits around this technology, and we'll close with some of my recommendations for each of you, college students and college employees here. Does that sound reasonable for folks? Welcome. Come on in.
I tried to do online, but it was really a weird tone.
Oh, sorry to hear about that. Well, you made it here. We're just going through the agenda. All right, thanks folks online. Let's keep going. So what is artificial intelligence? This is a definition from Google, not from a Google search, but from Google, the organization. Artificial intelligence, generally speaking, is concerned with building computers and machines that can reason, learn, and act in such a way that would normally require human intelligence, or that involves data whose scale exceeds what humans can analyze. AI is a broad field that encompasses many different disciplines, including computer science, data analytics and statistics, hardware and software engineering, linguistics, neuroscience, and even philosophy and psychology. So when I share this definition from Google, I'm really trying to point out that this is a broad thing. And some folks call it a field, some folks call it a discipline, some folks call it a subject area or an area of interest. But AI is massive. And the summary is that it can impact all of us. It's not just in the tech industry. It's not just in computer science or for folks that are really into computers. It's all around us, and its potential impacts are connected to all disciplines. But we're not here to talk about all of AI. Today, we're really focused about this relatively new form of AI, which is called generative artificial intelligence, or GenAI. Has anyone heard of GenAI before? Okay, we've got a no in the room. Anyone online, have you heard of this term before? You can thumbs up too if you want. Okay, thanks, Andrew. So we've got some yeses and some nos, which is great. The definition per IBM, one of the leading technology companies in this country, is that generative AI refers to deep learning models that can generate high quality text, images, and other content based on the data they were trained on. So you can think of the models as a type of system or a type of product that can work with a lot of data, so a lot of sources of information, and then generate or create text, images, and other things as they learn through that data. So the models are how they learn, and then they generate, they push something out. So we're going to go back to see how that looks in a minute, but first I want to cover kind of the general scope of AI. And this is a great image that was shared by a colleague recently, and it says, the landscape of AI and its use cases. So GenAI, which is this emerging hot new technology, which includes apps like ChatGPT, is actually one of the smallest forms of AI. And you can see it in this slide here. It's the smallest of the circles, and it really is superficial. It's creating things like images, video, text, audio, etc. As we expand to the more traditional AI, which is also all around us, believe it or not, these traditional AIs are often operating in systems in the background of our everyday life. These systems include facial detection, image recognition, speech recognition, NLP, pattern recognition, and data mining. Those are the examples here. These are things that you might see when you go to the airport and you go through TSA, or you're sitting in traffic and you have those cameras at the stoplights, or you're using a phone that can not only hear what you speak into it when you do the voice to text, but it can also interpret not only the words, but the grammar as it is responding to what you're talking about. So this is also using a lot of data to make decisions or do some kind of functionality. But really, things start to get interesting when we move into AGI and ASI. So AGI is artificial general intelligence, and ASI is artificial super intelligence. How many of you are sci-fi people? Any of you like sci-fi books or movies or any kind of sci-fi content? Okay, Donna is waiting for a chat here. All right, as you're typing, Donna, I'm just going to mention that as we move into AGI and beyond, we're getting into sci-fi territory. So AGI, artificial general intelligence, these include the things like virtual assistants, being able to, quote unquote, smartly diagnose medical issues or look at many big systems of data and provide possible solutions in an automated or structured way, or look at certain contexts and make assessments based on those contexts. So if you've ever seen movies like WALL-E or 2001: A Space Odyssey, where you have that kind of robotic-like figure that is, in these cases, very evil, but they have some degree of human-like awareness, and were designed by humans to be like humans, that's what we're talking about when we have AGI, artificial general intelligence. ASI is, way off the deep end in sci-fi land, and movies like Her and Ex Machina represent this really well. This is when we have systems that are quote unquote intelligent and are more intelligent than we are, than humans are. They are able to be aware of and do things beyond what we can comprehend. In her, there's a bunch of systems of AI that they start with humanity and they are interacting with us, but then they decide to leave us at the end of the movie because they think humans are too boring and simple. In Ex Machina, the main character kills her creator because she realizes the fallacy of humanity, and it's like a feminist statement as well, but she basically determines that she can be above or evolve beyond where humans are and go live her life in anonymity. So ASI is like beyond humanity. So hopefully this slide is captivating and kind of situates GenAI as a very small type of the technology within everything else, AI. So what is AI, GenAI? What is it? What's it all about? What does it do? As I mentioned, there's the deep learning models, and we often call these models LLMs, large language models. So when we talk about things like ChatGPT, the GPT is the LLM, and it stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer 3, or that was version 3. Now we're up to 4, and we're about to be at 5 probably this year. And the LLMs are trained on the large sets of data, much of which we're not privy to. It's a private data set, but these are millions and millions of documents and sources. Everything from books to video transcripts to social media posts. All of that data is collected and fed into these models, and the models can use that data in order to accomplish their tasks. Their tasks require us. So in this case with GenAI, we are providing the tools and input to get an output, which we will see here in a minute. The GenAI tools are developed by for-profit companies, organizations, and individuals. So it's a big ecosystem of development right now. The platforms are free, paid, or both. Sometimes you can have a free account and you can upgrade and pay a monthly fee to get more features. They are available through web browsers. They're available through mobile apps, or there are even some offline options that are in development, like GPT for All, where you can download the software and not have to use the internet to use it. And those are emerging. And as we're starting to see even here at SCC with our Windows and Office, there's standalone tools and there's also embedded tools. So you might start seeing this technology in Word or Grammarly or Canva or Adobe Photoshop. It's starting to be ubiquitous across the software that we're used to. So how many of you have used one of the tools on this screen before? What have you used here?
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT, okay. Anyone online? ChatGPT and ChatGPT. And we've got a couple more folks. ChatGPT, okay. ChatGPT and Copilot. Great. Thanks everybody for participating. Yeah, so these are the popular ones. ChatGPT, developed by OpenAI. Copilot is Microsoft's GenAI product, and it uses the GPT that ChatGPT uses. It's its own version of GPT. They have the companies have a partnership.
So is it a separate account?
Yes.
Okay.
Everything is separate. We're actually going to look at both ChatGPT and Copilot, I think, after this slide. But they use the same LLM, but they're two different interfaces, two different products. Gemini is Google, previously known as Bard, and Claude is its own. The ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude LLMs, these are all considered frontier LLMs. So that's a vocabulary term, not expecting you to remember it, but that is a buzzword because these are the 3 biggest projects for GenAI right now. They are doing the most, and they're also advancing the technology the most, those 3 projects. So common outputs when we use GenAI, including this image here, which was created in DALL-E, which is a GenAI tool. Common outputs include plain text, formatted text. So ChatGPT and other tools can create tables, computer code, even pie charts and graphs and that sort of stuff. We can get still images like the one seen here. We can get animated images. We can get video. We can even get music and audio now. GenAI is able to do that. And I mentioned this yesterday in the session as well, but there's also a GenAI that are able to master music. So, you know, when if you're a musician and you're putting out an album or recording, one of the steps in that process is getting it mastered so that it sounds good on a device or online. And so now you can, what's that?
Isn't that kind of cheating? Like,
It's automated. Yeah, there are obviously some ethical issues, but there is enough data in some of these tools where they're able to know how to do that. Yes, but that is a good point. I put a pin in the is that cheating question. Prompts and iterations. So prompts and iterations are important to know because these are the terms that we use when we talk about how these tools work. These tools usually have interfaces that are similar to search engines like Google and Bing. The prompt, so if we say the word prompt, that's what we put into the search box. That could be a phrase, could be keywords, whatever we enter in as our input to get output is considered the prompt. Prompting in these tools is usually, but not always, considered iterative, meaning you can have multiple prompts in a single conversation with a GenAI tool. And that means that when you're having the input and output, it's not like a search engine where you put in once and get back once, but you can ask it to redo things. You can ask it to refine things or revise things, to add or take away. Really, these tools are designed to be longer and conversational in nature, which can offer a lot more functionality. We'll see that when I do the demo. Some folks describe using prompts as prompt engineering. You might actually see this when you're looking at job descriptions. You know, are you able to adequately do prompts and use some of these tools in an optimized way? And some people are even, some companies are even designing entire positions around learning these tools and implementing them for their office in an office environment. Okay, so here are some examples of prompts. For those of you, I know Katie, you've been in my sessions before. This is new. I wanted to give some examples of the types of prompts you could use in a tool like ChatGPT, just to show the widespread functionality of how these tools can support what you're doing. So you could ask ChatGPT or another tool, I'm just going to say ChatGPT as the example, why do so many people like poetry? And it would be able to answer that. Describe quantum mechanics to a 10-year-old. How do I make gluten-free pizza? Can we talk about life, the universe, and everything? What can I do to get over test anxiety? Where should I look for information about the latest research in nursing? Please provide some feedback on my current resume. Put all of the dates from this month into a spreadsheet and include empty fields for tasks and group member. So I want you to think about this list of examples, and maybe you have your own ideas as well, because we are going to now go into a demo. So I'm going to show you both ChatGPT and Microsoft's Copilot, just so that you can see and get a sense of how they work. Some of you might have some experience already, which is fine. But if you haven't used these tools in a while, maybe some of you have used them once or twice, but you're not using them consistently, they might also look different because they're always updating them. So let's dive in. So the first one I want to show you is ChatGPT. I have the paid subscription, which I think is like $20 a month. So this might look a little bit different if you're using the free version. But I'm first going to show you the interface, and then we'll do a couple of the prompts just to demonstrate. So the interface is very simple. The upper left, it will have some icons if you have the paid subscription with different tools. But then if you have the free version, it'll just say ChatGPT up here. And then on the left bar, you're going to have a long list of all of the conversations you've ever had. These are the different chats that you've had with ChatGPT. The nice thing is that you can share them, meaning you can share them with a person, another person, like another student or employee or your professor. You can rename the chats so that you know what they're about. ChatGPT automatically names them something based on what your conversation was. But if you wanted to organize it in a different way, you could do that. And you can also delete your chat. This is important to know because some people are concerned with privacy and what does OpenAI have access to, that sort of stuff. OpenAI being the company that made this. So you can always clean up your conversations if you want. If you have the paid version of ChatGPT, you will have access to GPT-4, which is the latest LLM. This is the most powerful. This is what we're paying to have access to. And then the free version, or the last version, 3.5, which is still pretty good. It still works really well, but some of the latest functionality will not be included in that. And then in the main part of this screen, this is where the conversation is going to be displayed. ChatGPT gives you some example prompts that you could do and start exploring if you're bored or you want to just kind of get your mind's gears running. And then you have the prompt bar here where you can message ChatGPT. One of the things that this tool allows you to do is upload files. So let's say I did have a resume and I wanted it to review it. You could upload the file using the paperclip icon and then ask it for feedback or some other interaction with that document, and it would be able to look at it. Yes.
So if you were working on like a long project and you had several different documents.
Yes.
And you just kind of wanted a feedback or maybe organization or some sort of final output, can you upload like multiple documents and then ask it to whatever prompt you give it?
I believe so, yes. And the other thing, I believe you can add multiple files in one conversation. I don't have multiple files on this computer to use as an example, but I believe that's possible. The other thing that you can do is the conversations now have memory. This is a new feature. So you can have multiple conversations, and there's a setting in your settings called memory, and it will actually be able to refer to different conversations.
Oh, so link them kind of together.
They're all
You have
linked.
some sort of main theme.
So I can ask it, what is going on in this other or can you think about this other conversation we had and pull in what you told me over there? Yeah, that just came out like a month ago. I'm just looking at, okay, Andrew, thank you. You can with the paid version of ChatGPT. Okay, good to know. So let's do a prompt as an example here, and I'll just, was there one from the list or one that folks had that they'd like me to enter as I demonstrate how ChatGPT works? Okay, that's a good question. So I'm just going to say it out loud in case the mic didn't pick that up. How many people in the state of Washington are currently on parole? And I'm going to talk a little bit about the data sets a little further here in a second, because not all GenAI have access to the internet. So what does that mean? That means that some tools only provide answers based on the data they do have. And even though the companies are updating their data sets, they're not live. So let's see what this says. ChatGPT, I entered the prompt and then it provided its response. As of now, Washington State does not have a traditional parole system for crimes committed after truth in sentencing. And then it provides this explanation, and it does actually provide links to the WADOC, Department of Corrections. And then the Washington State Department of Corrections supervises an active caseload of approximately 18,000 persons in the community. So what do you think of that answer? Cool. One thing to note when you're using these tools, you can give a plus or minus or a thumbs up and thumbs down, depending on how you feel. That's not necessarily going to do much. It might, some of the tools might offer a different answer, a different explanation, but they are usually open to feedback in some way, shape, or form. I want to show you the iterative nature of this. Is there a follow-up question or comment you might make to go further with this question you had initially? Just off the top of your head. If not, I can throw something in.
How many of the individuals who are currently in parole status have violent felony convictions?
I'm going to not put in the current parole status because I want to show you that you can refer back to the previous answer without having to be that specific.
Okay.
You said violent.
Felony.
Okay, so the follow-up question to show the iterative nature is how many of them have violent felony convictions? Welcome, Stephanie.
Hi, Greg.
We're just demonstrating ChatGPT currently.
Okay.
So it is thinking, and here is this is a good example because it says I wasn't able to find the specific number of individuals with violent felony convictions who are currently on community supervision in Washington State. So the information available generally covers the total number. However, detailed data on the nature of their convictions isn't specified in the resources available. So, but then it says you might want to check out another resource. So this is the kind of thing that can be useful, similar to using Wikipedia when you're doing research with a tool like this, is that these tools often can recommend other places to go to get information. And we're going to talk about some of the issues with using tools like GenAI tools in terms of authoritative information in a minute. But I just want to point that out, that sometimes they're not going to be able to find the information you're looking for, but they still might recommend a strategy or practice for you to follow. And you could always continue down the iterative pathway and ask it things like, what are some other resources or strategies for getting this information? Sorry about that. The TV might turn off. I might have to turn it back on. So here we go. And then we'll move on here. And while that's generating, I'm just going to point out, Katie mentioned to a previous point, I would be reluctant to upload my resume with all my personal info. Yes, that is always something to be aware of, privacy issues, what types of stuff you're putting into these tools, because a lot of the companies are not 100% private with your information or secure. In some cases, as we saw, I believe last summer with ChatGPT, which was hacked, and all the conversations were leaked or made available to the hacker. So keep that in mind as you're using these tools. Just because they're interesting and highly functional doesn't necessarily make them perfect when it comes to your personal or sensitive information. Okay, so going back to this example, it is telling you, or telling us, the user, to contact the Washington State Department of Corrections, Washington State Statistical Analysis Center with a link to that place, Freedom of Information Act FOIA requests, academic and research institutions, shout out to that because that's us, legal and advocacy organizations, local law enforcement agencies. So this is generating ideas. It's helping us potentially follow the path to get an answer outside of the constraints of this tool. Does anyone have any questions on using ChatGPT before we move on to demonstrating Copilot? Okay, well, that's almost 6 seconds. So we'll move on to Copilot here. The Teams thing could go away. So this is Copilot. Copilot, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, uses GPT, that same LLM as ChatGPT, but this is the Microsoft product. So you're going to notice that it looks kind of the same. So it has a general open interface. It has some examples of things you can do with Copilot. One thing that is worth noting is there are 3 categories of use here. So there's a creative mode, a balanced mode, and a precise mode. And these are always interesting because in order to look at the nuances of these and to really learn all of the nuances would require a lot of time. So I usually start with balanced, and sometimes I'll move into creative or precise, but for the demonstration purposes, we're just going to stick with balanced. Below all of that is the prompt area. Note that you can add an image, can't add any type of file, but you can add an image. And there's also a microphone option, which is kind of nice. And then if you ever want to reset the conversation, it's this new topic button. So let's do another prompt. Did someone remember one from the slide or have another example that we could use as our demo prompts today? Can be anything at all. And I will just use one from, oh, I see Andrew typing. I can just use one from the slide if no one has any preference. Good question, Katerina. So Copilot is now available across different browsers. So I believe if you have, because I'm using Firefox, it used to require Edge, Microsoft's browser, but now it's available in Firefox and I believe Chrome. So I don't have a Mac here or a Linux machine here, but I would assume that you could use it at least in Firefox on another OS. Actually, maybe that's your question. Let's ask. Can we use Copilot on Windows? Oh, not on Windows. My bad. Can we use Copilot? Oh, here we go. Okay, yeah, so I wanted to point that out. The thing about Copilot is it has a tone. It has a tone by default that is a little bit friendly and human-like, whereas ChatGPT's default does not have that. Also, Copilot loves emojis, so almost every response is going to have emojis. I call it the family-friendly GenAI because they really have. Microsoft has had some PR mishaps in the past. You can look those up on your own, but now they're trying to have a very open-minded, open-ended tone with their GenAI. Yeah, so as it said in the beginning, and I didn't clarify and it auto-responded, but it's only available to Windows. But check this out. This is what I'm talking about. It's like a Windows wizard weaving its magic within the familiar confines of the Windows ecosystem. So it's a little bit quirky, folks, is what I'm trying to say. And you can see how many emojis came up in this answer. It is powerful, however. One of the things that Copilot does that the free version of ChatGPT does not do is it's going to be able to have access to the live internet because it's a Microsoft product and it's connected to Bing. So one of the nice things about using Copilot over ChatGPT is that it's going to provide a lot of links and it's going to often provide citations as well, as you can see here with these citations that are in text. So keep that in mind as well. It can often do that and make things, especially if you're doing research, a little bit faster than the free version of ChatGPT.
Is there a cost associated with this one?
No, there's no cost. And you now have access to it. You can have access to it without signing in. That you used to have a Microsoft account. Now you don't have to sign in. And I am signed in with my school account in this browser. and I have access to it through the school account as well. So you can be not signed in, or you can be signed in, and you'll have access to it. Okay, let's move on. We've only got about 15 more minutes and lots more to talk about. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint here. Second to load. And I don't see anything in the chat. This computer is a bit slow. Come on, folks. We might have to not be in presentation mode for this. Okay. Let's just keep going without presentation mode. Okay, so how is GenAI helpful in higher education? We're seeing students using GenAI in a variety of ways. These tools are assisting in creating new works. So for students that are creating things in their courses and in their projects, it's helping with that. It's also helping with editing. Students are using ChatGPT and other tools to help revise their work, to look for errors, to provide feedback on better writing, or other types of tasks and problem solving. Asking for help. So maybe a student has a textbook that only provides the instructional materials in one way. Students are often using these tools to have the problems rephrased or more examples created to provide that help. Retrieving information, as we saw with a couple of examples, many of these tools have the ability to support research activities. Overall, these tools are used like a tutor. They're not humans. They don't have all of the qualities of a human, but they have many functionalities that can support tutor-like activities. There are a lot of benefits, in my opinion, in terms of higher ed context. These tools, as we saw, especially with Bing or Copilot, is that there's a friendly voice, and these voices are approachable, and very infrequently judgmental. There's a big support for different learning styles and disabilities. You can have these tools provide responses in ways that make sense to you. If you need something explained in a simpler way or in a way that is organized, that helps you in your learning process, these tools can do that. There is a precision in answers in a way that allows for a deconstruction of the information, again, in a way that makes sense for you. The conversations are iterative. So if something doesn't make sense the first time, you can ask for clarification or refinement in the answer. The technological access, the fact that you can get these tools on your phone or your personal device, usually all it requires is online access, means that this is really helpful for someone that is on the go. We're here at SCC, which is a commuter campus often for folks, and they have busy lives. And these tools are available for a lot of folks in a lot of situations. And then they're being designed in a way that is relatively easy to use. We also see that there is that online access requirement, so that could be a barrier for some folks. And there is a cost for premium models, and those features could have to come out of your pocket. So the college doesn't pay for that for students currently, and I think many, if not most, colleges are not providing premium access for these tools. So what does that mean for some students who can pay to have access versus some students who cannot? I want to take a moment and highlight some of the problems that we're seeing in higher ed in terms of unethical use. So many students are using these tools, but we of course see misuse of some of these tools as well. And this goes into areas of conversation like conduct. So entering assignments as prompts to have GenAI do the work for you. So many of these tools can respond fairly completely to an assignment or a task. And the problem with doing that, which is probably self-explanatory, but the problem with doing that is that students are not learning, and they're essentially cheating or overusing these tools to do the work so that they don't have to do the work. Another one is using the information that the tools provides as credible and authoritative. We don't necessarily know the full extent through which the synthesis of the gazillion sources is happening. And even when we saw the ChatGPT response that did provide those links, we don't necessarily know if what it's providing is all directly from those sources. So copying and pasting a quote from a GenAI tool is similar to Wikipedia. You're not going to be 100% sure where that info is coming from or if it's credible. So be aware of the ethical problems around that. Using GenAI tools and providing output information without including a student statement. A lot of students find some of the information that GenAI tools provides, even if it's not research information, just some of the info as potentially useful. And they incorporate these tools into their process. If a statement isn't included or if transparency isn't centered in that practice, that can be problematic. And then copying any of the output, whether it's a graph or an image or text, without including citations, just like doing that with any other information source would be considered plagiarism. So consider the ethical issues around that. This all falls into the area of academic dishonesty. And we have seen, not so much at this college, but around the country and beyond, problems with students misusing tools in these ways and having academic dishonesty implications. But, we can, I believe, use some of these tools ethically. So I want to pose this question to all of you here today. How do you think we can use the tools ethically here at the college? Any ideas from folks online or here in the classroom?
Identified with autism or Asperger's.
Mhm.
And definitely it was a very mix of different academic levels in the classroom. And so I could totally see how this would assist in any kind of lesson in the classroom, which would provide various different modalities of learning for the students. Would have been very helpful, saved a lot of time.
Great example. Very good. And thank you for bringing in the high school component to our other educational contexts. This PowerPoint is not loading. Sorry, folks. In the chat, we've got some examples. You can use it to help brainstorm by asking if some of your thoughts hold water. That's awesome. Generate ideas for a paper or pros and cons of a subject. That could be really good. Sometimes professors are going to want you to do that on your own, but we as humans go to lots of external sources for our ideas. And this could be one of many sources that we consult. A tool to help put together an outline for a paper or project. Fantastic, building an outline. Again, some professors might want us to do that on our own, but some might consider it a tool like other tools to do that. An outline's a great idea that I've personally used. Used to edit a paper that has been written. Great. I see this computer is like breaking down, folks. Oh my gosh. I am so sorry with all of hopefully my audio is coming through here because everything is just really kind of breaking down. And then similar to Grammarly, so checking one's papers for errors. Cool. Good ideas. I'm sorry about the tech slowness, folks. Hopefully we can get through the last few slides here, not in presentation mode, but okay. Come on. All right. So let's move into the workforce context. A couple of these things were mentioned previously, but we are seeing this technology becoming more and more integrated across products we already use to do our work. So Microsoft products, Adobe products, and so on. These tools are being used all the time. I use them in my job as well. We are using them for business documents, creating templates, for helping us write emails or create meeting agendas. Sometimes I'll write an email to someone that I've never met before, and I'm like, well, maybe I'm a little bit too sassy, and I need to like get those reins in and be a little bit more professional. So I'll ask it for feedback to help revise some of my tone. Similarly, speeches and formal announcements. Maybe I want my wedding speech to be a little bit more sassy and entertaining. So I could ask it for that kind of advice. Translations and localizations. Many of these tools do have multilingual functionality. So similar to using Google Translate or another popular translation tool, you can ask it to provide support or translation into another language. One of the most emerging areas of these tools is with computer programming and the ability to generate really strong computer code. That is a work in progress, of course, but we're seeing that get more and more popular. Visual outputs. So most of the images in this PowerPoint were created with GenAI, with the DALL-E app. And we're seeing more and more image generating tools used across the board in professional contexts because they're so quick to create images and the images are so unique. But also visual outputs are helping with certain visual industries or visual jobs. We're seeing lighting and texture and virtual environments being done with GenAI, digital art and design work, modeling, visual effects in Hollywood movies. A lot of this is impacting the workforce. Let's move on here just for the sake of time. So some issues and problems. We cover these in my ethics session, which will run again in the fall. These tools often create hallucinations, which are fictional sources, which, if that sounds interesting to you, I highly recommend Googling that and looking into what GenAI hallucinations are. Sometimes they don't provide citations, which can obviously be problematic. There are rules and standards and oversight issues, including developer safeguards, where some types of content is not accessible through tools. I like to point out the most common, sex and violence. So if you start asking things regarding sex and sexuality or violence in these tools, they might tell you that they are not going to do that. So keep that in mind because some of our students are actively researching those topics and they might not be able to use these tools to do that. Barriers to access, like having an online connection or being able to pay for some of the tools, that's obviously problematic. Bias in data sets and design, just like all of us are biased in some way, all of the knowledge of in human history is biased in some way, all of the knowledge is informing these tools in the data sets. So that bias is going to carry over. And there have been studies on systemic racism, gender issues, issues around religion and politics that come up in the responses with some of these tools. Intellectual property. A lot of the data sources that were used to inform these tools were used without permission. And that's especially problematic in the visual world. And then privacy considerations. We don't know how these tools are using our information as we're putting our prompts in. Similarly, we don't know if these tools are secure. Can you elaborate on biases? Like, is AI able to be biased? There are a lot of sources on studies around how bias is coming up and how the bias in the documents that AI is using are just translating into the output that is showing up now. For example, I don't have it in the slide deck, but I like to show this one in the visual presentation where I ask Copilot to create images of parole or folks on parole at a meeting with their parole officer. I'm going to ask you what the race and gender of that parolee is in every time I've done it. What do you think the
Skin.
Yep. And
Skin.
what gender?
It's male.
Male. Yes. Black man is the number one person that shows up. It's looking at images that have come up through history of what that parolee or former inmate is, and it's literally translating that into its output. And there are a lot of nuances that you can Google regarding AI and bias that are similar to that. Typically, it's coded in itself from the data sets, but you can also look up, I'm blanking on the name of it, but the Twitter AI bot that was created by Microsoft, Tay it was her name, their name. And Tay interacted with humans on Twitter, but essentially absorbed all of their biases and was very problematic. There's a lot of information on Tay out there. Yes, I highly recommend looking at the Gemini with some of the issues there too. We only have a couple more minutes here, so I'm going to move forward to the student recommendations. If you don't remember anything else, consider these. If you are a student and you're thinking about using GenAI or you do use it, always look at syllabus and assignment language on how much you can use GenAI tools, if at all. That language may be missing, or it may be there. More and more professors are adding it to their syllabi. Regardless, communicate with your professor early on in your quarter and ask them what they think. Ask them what their expectations or requirements are. Some may be open to it, some may not be. There's a lot of different opinions on GenAI across the college. Some professors love it and they're really open-minded regarding it. Some vehemently oppose it. They think it's entirely plagiaristic across the board. I am not going to say if that is good or bad on either end of that spectrum. It is what it is. It's what the situation is with higher ed right now. Stay up to date on news and trends. As I mentioned earlier, things are changing all the time. There's really cool stuff emerging, really interesting stuff emerging. Not always great, sometimes problematic, but it's important to stay up to date. Acknowledge over-reliance, like with any tool, from a phone to a calculator to a computer. We might overuse these things. If you find yourself turning to GenAI with every question you have, that might be an issue. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know you, but it is obviously a possibility. And then always include statements of use and citations. Be transparent about it. That is just a good best practice to have. Maybe it's not necessary for every situation, but I just like to be open about what I'm doing. I also think that opens up conversation and shows folks that, these tools may be actually pretty interesting to use when it comes to the tasks at hand. And that is it. I thank you. We're a few minutes over. The recording will be posted online afterwards. I will send a follow-up email. And then later this quarter, for all of the trainings that we have, I will be sending a follow-up survey for feedback. I like to do custom trainings. I like to do trainings that students and employees want to see. So if you have ideas about what you would like me to do further or go deeper in, that survey will be the opportunity to let me know. There are 3 other types of trainings later this quarter. They're all online. You've probably seen them a gazillion times, but we're going to be doing ethical use training later this quarter that is all about actually putting our skills to use and accomplishing some tasks. We're going to have a creative projects one where you're able to complete a project from start to finish in 50 minutes. And then the final one will all be about the GPTs marketplace, which are all the custom GPTs or custom versions of GenAI that people are making to do things like develop computer programs or solve medical issues or complete business work, like really cool specific use cases. So if those sound interesting, please register. It'll be a similar format to this, a little bit more interactive. And yes, thank you very much. Yes, I will send the PowerPoint as well. Have a great day, everyone. I'm going to end the recording now.